Hey, everybody, welcome to BCB Live. We're going into Drive Safe Dave, an interview with Alan Adler. Alan with FreightWaves. Alan, I want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are. I'm going to tell you this, though. I am a big fan of yours. I watch you all the time on FreightWaves talking to Katie and those folks there. Love your information. You're kind of like this guy here. You know a little bit about everything, except I have a feeling most of the things you talk about are probably true.
Well, the idea is to sell it, right? So, whether it's true or not, sell it well, and then, it may as well be true, I guess. So,
No doubt
anyway,
about it.
I'll do my best.
Hey, Alan. So you obviously do that. You write for FreightWaves. You're involved in a lot of different stories on FreightWaves, the electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles. But you also had a stint there working for the Associated Press, GM as well. So a pretty you've been. I don't want to say you've been around. May not sound the best, but you're pretty. You know a little bit about everything. It sounds like, seriously.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been a long-ish career, I guess. I mean, 40 plus years all in all. Started in journalism at the AP out of college, and was there for about 14 years, and then went to the Detroit Free Press for a few years, and ultimately took a 20-year detour, kind of riffing off the Eagles there about the 14-year vacation, but a 20-year detour into PR. It was a good run at General Motors. Did a lot of media relations stuff. Worked in China for a couple of years, and
Wow.
got to really understand the automotive side of the business. Left GM in 2017 and did some freelance for a while, and then ultimately ended up in the commercial trucking space. First at trucks.com, and then 2.5 years ago, came over to FreightWaves.
Hey, Alan, that extensive career. Hey, I was reading an article the other day that you had talked about how electronic vehicles were taking in the trucking industry, were taking a lead ahead of regular diesel trucks, and how they were being done more or quicker, or being taken the forefront, or kind of in the way of everybody else trying to get their diesel truck.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I picked up on that from the folks at Kenworth out at CES in Las Vegas, where the comparison was interesting because 3 to 6 months to get an electric truck at this point, versus about 13 based on the backlog to build at the manufacturers for diesels right now. So you have to say, well, how come? Why is that? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is that you've got a regulatory environment coming here in the next few years that's going to require electric trucks. They may not have to be battery electric, but that's sort of the coin of the realm for the moment. And I think that what's going to happen is that as these manufacturers recognize that you've got the advanced clean truck rule that started in California, now been adopted to 5 other states and potentially 15 states. It's going to basically create a sales quota for electric trucks. So you're going to need to have them in your fleet. Right now, they obviously sell for 2 to 3 times as much as a diesel truck. So the revenue generation on the part of the manufacturers and the sellers is very good. So if Peterbilt sells an electric truck today, they're going to book a lot more revenue, not profits, but revenue on selling that truck. So there's definitely that as a factor. But I think the regulatory part of things, and to some extent, this growing sort of sustainability thing that's going on the part of a lot of the fleet customers.
Yeah, I read that article, and I had lunch with some fine folks over at Kenworth a couple days ago, and I brought that up to them because here we are. We also have a trucking company. We're still waiting on some trucks to come in. I was like, hey, is there any truth to this right here? In which they came and said, without a doubt, it's true. However, the cost associated with it, it's not like people are just ordering hundreds of these electric vehicles. There's still not a big amount of orders are saying being put in. And I asked the question, I don't know if they knew or not, but back when we were having the propane and all the talk around that, are the states or is the country, are they out giving rebates or helping these trucking companies purchase these electric trucks right now?
I can speak to electric. I can't really speak to propane or some of the other alternatives, but I can tell you that both through the low carbon fuel standard and also a lot of upfront incentives from California, principally. Other states have them. I'm not as familiar with them, but there's a program. I'm just going to use the acronym because I can't remember exactly, but it's a hybrid voucher program called HVIP in California that will provide up to $120,000 on the purchase of a Class 8 electric truck. So, most recently this week, or last week, I should say, Nikola qualified for that with its battery electric truck, and Kenworth, Peterbilt have long since qualified. I think Volvo and Daimler have as well. So, the upfront price, if you're taking 120,000 off of that, that's going to bring it back closer to what you would pay for a diesel. And then, your payback's going to be a lot faster, in terms of getting these on the road. Now, one caveat I think that's important on the delivery time of the electric trucks is that doesn't mean you're going to be up and ready to go, because you've got infrastructure considerations. You've got to get your charger. You've got to maybe trench to get that electric power in and things like that. That can take longer, and it's also some more cost up front. Now, of course, PACCAR at CES showed, I think for the first time, maybe not the first time, but they showed their own chargers that they're making with ABB, and so they'll be happy to sell you a charger in addition to a truck. And so, that's something that PACCAR's talked about in terms of being an additional revenue stream for them.
Yeah, and as you talk about this infrastructure, not only do you have to do it at your base terminal, but there's really not. And if I were to go out and buy one of these EVs, I really am hesitant to do that, because the outside infrastructure is not really in place, or is it even being invested in that I know of or can visibly see in our area or anywhere else that we would use that vehicle.
Yeah, everybody you talk to in this space, in the infrastructure space, says start early, make your calls to utilities, get them out, take a look at your site, figure out what you're going to need to do. If you've got a newer electric infrastructure where you are, it's probably easier than if you're, I think somebody described it as being sort of, down on the port somewhere and it was put in 70 years ago. It's going to cost you a lot more money to upgrade and get that power to the door. The chargers themselves are probably the easiest part of that, but it's getting that power in. Now, there is also, by the way, some pretty juicy incentives on the infrastructure side as well, in terms of chargers and even some money. I think I want to say it's California Edison that has a pretty nice program with hundreds of millions of dollars to help offset the costs of the getting the power in.
You know what? And you talk about the CES and the show that you're at. It's 20. Here it is. We're in 2022. It's crazy, right? It just seems like these last 2 years with COVID, it doesn't even seem like it even happened. But we are in 2022. What are you seeing from these shows, or what's the most intriguing thing regarding technology and the vehicles outside of just the EVs that's available to the industry today?
Yeah, okay. So let's go back to about 2018, and we saw the beginnings of this, and some of these trucks now are coming back in for second owners, and that's safety equipment. You're quite familiar with all this in terms of automatic emergency braking and forward collision alert and lane departure warning, maybe even lane centering. Some of the what's called level 2 automation or assisted driving. I think those things are pretty much baked in now in terms of the vehicles we're seeing. You're also seeing a lot of positives around aerodynamics and basically fuel economy. You all are familiar with Mike Roth, I'm sure, at the Council for Freight Efficiency. They just did their Run on Less electric program in the fall as part of the ACT Expo. And, their findings are basically that there are really some nice sweet spots for electric vehicles. I know we started talking about electrics, but they would be in the van and sort of pick up a delivery space, last mile, that sort of thing. And that's coming relatively quickly because you don't really need high-speed charging for some of those vehicles. They're going to be return to base. They're going to be charged at night. They're going to probably be able to be charged on what's called a level 2 charger, which is not high-speed direct current. So there's some things that work pretty well today. Those batteries are smaller. They don't need quite the juice that some of the others do. And if those trucks are going less than 100 miles a day, they're ideal for this. It's the bigger trucks. It's the Class 8s that are a bit of a challenge. And one of the things that some of these fleets have recognized is that batteries in terms of certainly, middle mile are maybe not the best solution. Today we can get up to about 300 miles, maybe a little less, on a Class 8 truck between charging. That's not really going to work for long haul. So we're hearing a lot more now about hydrogen and fuel cell trucks. Obviously, we've got Hyzon out there that not doing much here in the States yet, but globally, because they spun out of a Singapore company, doing a little bit more on the fuel cell truck space, especially with sort of special service trucks. We're waiting on Nikola 2023, we think, for their fuel cell day cab. And again, they're looking at 300 to 500 miles there. But the long haul truck is ultimately probably going to be a fuel cell powered truck, just because it's a drop in fuel and you're going to be able to go a lot farther on it, without the wait times of recharging.
You have when you talk about these hydrogen and these clean burn vehicles, it's kind of a weird technology. We've had hydrogen around a long time. We know what it can do. I mean, look at the Hindenburg, but those gases themselves they can create dangers to the environment if they're released. I mean, it's not like they're in set the end all answer, right? I mean, you would agree, correct?
Well, I wouldn't on this Hindenburg point, because you have to go back to your history lessons there and see that it really wasn't the hydrogen that was the problem with the Hindenburg. Because when hydrogen evaporates or is released, it goes straight up. Now it does burn white hot, so you have to be careful of that. It's a heat that you can't even see. It's so hot, but it really isn't one of these ever-present dangers. Probably more than a gasoline fed fire would be. It's intense, but it does shoot straight up. It doesn't kind of hang around and burn everything in sight, that kind of thing. So I think there's a few misconceptions and time-honored Hindenburg kind of references there. I think the industry and those closer to it probably know that's not true, but the public still does have some of those thoughts, and you sort of it's one of the reasons that I think you have to sort of try to set that record straight when you can. I want to be careful here. I'm not selling hydrogen, but I think you have to understand a little bit more about its safety. And when they do the tanks, because hydrogen is stored at super high pressure, the tanks are typically good enough to handle a 50 millimeter shell. When I worked at General Motors, I did media relations a couple times in the fuel cell space, and GM is one of the originators really of hydrogen vehicles, going all the way back to technology that came from NASA during the Saturn launches in the 60s. And they shot really big caliber armaments at these tanks, which are typically carbon wrapped and things like that. They don't penetrate. I mean, if they did, again, that hydrogen's going straight up. It's not going to, splash all over you or something. But there are obviously precautions that have to be taken. But I don't think we have the danger factor maybe that some of the public thinks.
Hey, I told you when we began the show that I'm a bigger fan of you today, because what our listeners do, they fact check this guy all the time, because I'm not smart enough to be able to do it. I don't know my history, and I love it when we have people that can fact check the great Drive Safe Dave. He is all knowing when it comes to history. I appreciate that more than anything else. Boy, my heart is
I stand
full.
corrected, sir. I stand corrected, and dude.
You mean it wasn't the 50 caliber shell that you thought was great? I thought that was the best part, when I talked about it.
Not armor piercing, but definitely the shell itself.
No, I don't know about armor piercing, but I can tell you those tanks are pretty tough.
Good
and
stuff.
They're designed in such a way as to, tamp down any thought of, there've been crash tests done with hydrogen vehicles. GM did them, and I'm sure that as we get closer with some of the Nikola product and especially here in the U.S., they'll go through the same crash testing that that other trucks do and that kind of thing. I mean, but look, hydrogen's flammable. So is diesel. So is gasoline. Certainly methane, propane. They're all flammable. So you've got those issues, and you do have to account for them. And I think the industry is quite aware and what it needs to do. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that for right now. I'll tell you though that for a long haul perspective, and let's take hydrogen as a given for long haul in 10 or 15 years. I mean, you've got Daimler and Volvo have formed a joint venture. These guys are not friends, but they formed a joint venture to make fuel cell trucks. So let's look out 10 or 15 years when you start to see some of these things out there in numbers. And, then combine that with some of this autonomous technology. I mean, it's kind of a future state that's pretty exciting for the industry. There's the idea of autonomy. I spend a great deal of my time writing about that these days. I've had an opportunity to be in about 5 of the trucks that are out there that are companies that are testing, these things. And I can tell you that, some of the other myth is that, they're going to take driver jobs away. Probably not. I think what's going to happen is those jobs that people really don't like, and I'll let you guys comment on this, the long haul out of home for 2 weeks at a time, and, having to sleep in cheap hotels or in the truck, that kind of stuff isn't very popular these days. And those are the jobs that autonomy ultimately replaces. And then the jobs that are replaced are presumably repurposed as last mile jobs, things where you can go home at night and that kind of thing and have a life. I mean, that's the narrative that's out there. I tend to think it's true.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. It's we think about that final mile delivery. Well, for us in the trucking industry, well, the one thing that we can always seem to hire are local drivers that can make that local delivery and get home, see mom and dad, and go to the baseball games. The struggle, especially with the new drivers coming in, is I don't want to be out for 2 weeks. I don't want to be out for 7 days. And it's a struggle to, I'll tell you, the struggle's not just, is not just bringing them into the business, but the struggle is that younger group of drivers is watching them struggle through a marriage while they're 25, 28, 30 years old, because that they're not yet there, that they're missing out on some important times of their life, and they don't have that support from their spouse at home, and it creates some safety issues because of the arguments that go on while they're out there on the road.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and I think there's some other issues too. Trucking often isn't a job of first resort. It tends to be a fourth job, as I've heard it. So you're coming into the business when you're in your 30s, and maybe you've already had the marriage problems, or maybe you haven't. I'll stay out of that. But I would say that this opportunity of getting newer and younger people into the business is going to be just like it was with automated transmissions, right? I mean, how many people can really drive a stick anymore or want to drive a stick? They weren't trained on it. They don't know how to do it. So why is 90% plus of the transmissions out there automated now? So there are issues like that, and the safety stuff. And again, autonomy is probably, I don't want to say it's a younger man's game, but it probably is. I mean, in terms of the idea of having the truck drive that middle mile without any assistance. That happened back in December. Too Simple actually did an 80-mile driver out pilot from Tucson to Phoenix, and it didn't crash. In fact, I think its biggest challenge was the people that looked over and didn't see anybody in the cab were trying to get their camera phones out quick enough to take pictures.
Right.
Yeah,
Distractions.
The novelty of it and trying to swerving around it. Yeah, I get it. The novelty. We talk about this new technology, and I guess not just that. I'm looking in any of the stuff that you've been looking at, any of it besides just the safety, any other stuff that you're looking at that may help the driver out there on the road, built in. I do like the automatic braking. I do like the collision avoidance system. I do like the lane departure system. Any other new technologies out there that are going to be safety based to help the driver that haven't really been discussed or you see out there in the future?
Yeah, there's one that I really do like. I have written about it. I've been in the truck, and it's this video mirror taking the place of those 50-inch mirrors on the side of the truck. A company called Stone Ridge out of Michigan developed these, and I think Kenworth and Peterbilt are the first to put them into real production. There's an FMCSA waiver for 5 years as an aftermarket add-on. In other words, you have to keep your mirrors, and you can add this in. But we're getting closer to having, I think, a regulation that will allow these mirrors. Now, they're going to do a couple things. One is it's going to save your neck. You're not going to be craning as much to try to see things that are hard to see, because these are 280-degree mirrors. They don't really look at the front. They look at the sides and the back. So, a lot of savings, presumably in damageability when you're going into a dock. You're not going to bang the dock. You also, have sort of a live video feed of what's going on around you. Again, this is not really a level 2 technology in terms of automation, but it's something that I think becomes, once you're used to it, and my understanding is it doesn't take long to get used to it. But these video mirrors replacing these big gulp mirrors on the sides of the truck, that's a big one, and it's also going to save fuel. I mean, maybe 1%, and multiply that across the size of a fleet, and you're talking serious coins. So I think that's a technology that I'm pretty impressed with. I think it's pretty slick.
Yeah, I had the opportunity at Kenworth, as a matter of fact, up in Seattle, to take that truck around the track a few times. And what they say as well with that is, I was in the daytime and it was no rain or anything like that, but the visibility in the rain, and there are no blind spots. A really big deal with the truck driver, right? There's no blind spots, in the visibility at nighttime as well. The only piece, and I gave him my opinion on that, is I feel, like the forward facing cameras we have today, they're always recording, right? We see the events, and what they haven't got to yet is the ability for those cameras on the side to also do that same recording, pushing out. So if in fact there is a side swipe accident or any accident, be able to grab that from that side view mirror, that'd be critical, on the inside that cab. So they said it wasn't available yet. They are working on that, but huge technology. And I know we only have a couple of minutes. I want to keep it to this one right here. So when I was talking to the folks at KW and even Volvo, some executives, they all do this, and they're talking about 2024. We know we have a truck crisis right now. We know the chips. We know that everybody's on allocation, right? It doesn't matter how many trucks you ordered. This is what you're going to get. We're part of that. 2023 has already been sold out, they believe. And that doesn't even include the orders for people ordering because of the EPA for 2024. What are you hearing regarding that? The EPA, the trucks, the trucking companies that say, you know what, I'm not going through this again. I'm going to order my trucks in 2023. What are you hearing regarding any of that?
Well, you bring up a good point about 23, because that's going to be one of our classic pull ahead years, assuming there's supply to be had, because of the coming regulations around NOx and greenhouse gas in 24. People are going to try to pre-buy and get the 23 trucks. The problem right now starts with semiconductors, but it doesn't end there. You've got a lot of COVID-related supply issues that have kind of mucked up the supply chain, and it'll get maybe a little better. I tend to follow the trailer guys a lot, because I do cover equipment at FreightWaves as well as the OEMs, and the trailer guys say, it's whack-a-mole. As soon as we fix one area, another one pops up, and so I think they're going to do the best they can. But what we've had now is a flip. If you guys go back to the 90s and you remember around 95. It was the biggest cancellation year ever. And it was because, fleets were canceling truck orders. Well, now the shoe's on the other foot, and the manufacturers are the ones canceling the orders because they can't build to them. And so, your backlog right now is, I'm going to say, around 275,000, give or take. That's a 13 or 14 month backlog. Not the biggest in history. That was probably 2018, but still significant. And I think that what happens is you can almost build these trucks. You can have them sitting on the lot, red tagged. I think Kenworth was among the first to do that, where they would build them and red tag them and then come back and put that chip in that was needed. So you've got some of that going on. I want to believe this is going to work itself out over time, but nobody I've talked to has a day or time when it's going to be fixed.
All right, so you bring up the chips, and I know we're really out of time, but I have one more question to you. So when it comes to, and when it comes to, say, Bendix and those companies right there, what happens, or have you heard anything with them running out of the chips? Because when trucks are unable to be produced because of safety, because of that chip, I've even heard it that said, you know what, we're still going to put the trucks out. They're just not going to have some of these safety capabilities. I'm saying, as a truck owner, is like, I don't want that truck because I'll lose that in court all day if there's an accident on that. Have you heard anything about folks like Bendix that are going to run short on chips and not be able to give these safety mitigation systems out on trucks?
I haven't heard that on the truck side. I'm familiar with some features on the car side, like heated seats, things like that. in luxury cars that they're sort of Xing out that option, or in the case where it's standard, they're taking that chip for other purposes. I think what these guys are doing, and they're getting the purchasing guys and logistics guys are getting pretty sophisticated at moving chips around. They're obviously going to go into the more expensive product, the greater revenue product. We had a guy call us at FreightWaves and ended up being a pretty good story on a Western Star truck 5700 that he had ordered. He couldn't get anything else, so he ordered a Western Star. He's in Pennsylvania, ordered it in Dallas, and the dealership called up and said, "Hey, order's canceled." He's like, "What do you mean my order's canceled?" Well, it turns out that Daimler told the dealers to cancel those out. Now they covered that by saying, "Well, we're going to stop making the 5700 after 2021," and they never really owned up to canceling orders, but they were doing it, and there were multiple reports of that. And so I think that's the kind of thing where, the 5700 is basically a Cascadia, right? I mean, it's a dressed up Cascadia. And I think
real.
that, you'll see that kind of thing where you're moving chips to where you can not just sell the vehicles because they'll buy anything that's out there, but to the better revenue product.
Got you. Alan, I want to thank you for joining us here at BCB Live. You bring a lot of knowledge, and I want to make sure hey, you have an open door into this place anytime. Let us know. We'd love to have you on here again. Appreciate what you do. Appreciate the coverage, and I appreciate that history lesson you gave my buddy over here too.
This guy hates me over here. What are you saying?
I love it. I love it. Good stuff.
I just don't buy the Hindenburg thing. You want to talk about Hindenburg? We'll do another show about the Hindenburg report, okay? But no, seriously, thank you. Thanks for having me. Be happy to come back anytime.
Hey, you know what? Before you get out of here, I want you to do us a quick favor and say BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
What am I going to say again? One more time.
BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
Okay, BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
Woo!
All
Appreciate
right.
you, Alan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. See you later now.
Man, great conversations
Thanks.
that we had.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you, Alan. Man, just a wealth of knowledge right there, and it's something that we want to continue to to do. Bring folks like Alan into our show to really put some value to it, because you and I only know so much, right?
as seen right here.
That was the greatest thing ever, man alive. That we're gonna have to replay over and over. I know as soon as he said that, you're like, oh no, Sir Rick's got me.
Oh yeah, that was great stuff.